Hi, my name is Chris Galler with the Minnesota Association of Realtors, and with me today is Brad Boyd with Thomsen and Nybeck, one of our legal counsel. Today we're going to discuss an issue that we're starting to find in the marketplace that's causing a lot of havoc, and it has to do with short sales and situations where the realtor or the broker is involved in a situation where they're trying to purchase a property while representing the seller in a short sale. This is a situation where a seller is facing a foreclosure somewhere down the line or may only be behind with a few payments. They usually owe more on the property than what the property is worth. And they're interested in purchasing it in a new, I don't want to say scam, but a new situation where we're worried about the ethical concerns and some of the legal concerns that agents may fall into if they're not acting appropriately. So for this example, we'll pretend that there's seller A and Realtor B. And Realtor B has gone out and reviewed the property and thinks this would be a good one to purchase, but they're purchasing it in a very short-term manner. They enter into a listing contract with the seller, and they enter into that listing contract as well as a purchase agreement. And the purchase agreement situation says that the Realtor will purchase the property as an investor from the seller, but they will be closing on the same day with the seller, or in some situations not actually closing with the seller but transferring that purchase agreement to another buyer. And there gets to be a number of legal questions there, especially in a scenario where the realtor is then acting as the negotiator on the short sale. So let's say that the property's mortgage is $100,000. I agree to buy that property for $50,000 from the seller. And I write a purchase agreement that says that I'll purchase it for $50,000, but if indeed I'm unable to sell it between now and the closing date, that then I'm not purchasing it, and it's sort of like a contingency. In the interim period, I've purchased it now from the seller, let's say for $50,000. In the interim period, I market it as the future buyer of the property for $75,000. I then find a buyer for it. Let's say Brad is the buyer, and Brad agrees to pay $75,000, $25,000 over what I'm purchasing it from the seller, and oftentimes the seller doesn't know that I'm selling it to Brad for more than what I'm purchasing it from him. So this creates a number of issues. So Brad Boyd, our legal counsel with Thomsen Nybeck, is here to kind of go through some of the legal entanglements you may find. So I'm going to shoot a couple of questions at Brad. We're going to answer these very generally for you. Brad has written an excellent article on this that you can find that's linked to this particular video cast. You can also, if you're a broker, call the legal hotline and ask general questions about scenarios that you may face, or you can consult your own attorney and ask them about your liability. So the first question, Brad, is can you discuss with us the liability issues that an agent or broker may find themselves in when they're representing a seller and purchasing the property from the seller and also then acting as the seller's short sale negotiator?
Sure, Chris, that's a great question. And I think that scenario is kind of ripe with conflict. I think in the example Chris laid out, you've got a listing agent or a realtor who is representing the seller. So automatically there are fiduciary duties to the seller from the listing agent. The listing agent has to hold themselves in a high degree of professional responsibility to that seller and in an agency capacity. They ultimately owe the seller duties of confidentiality, of loyalty, of reasonable care, etc. And so that listing agent in some ways is beholden to the interests of the seller and needs to protect and promote and preserve the interests of the seller. When they then become involved as an interested party, as a potential buyer, they've got in some instances a built-in, and almost in universal instances, a built-in inherent conflict. They're duty bound to preserve and protect the interests of the seller, and yet they're now becoming a buyer and they want to promote and protect their own interests, and so there's an inherent clash in there. There's really three areas of liability and potential pitfalls for them. The first is if something were to go wrong, whether they deceive or mislead or misrepresent or engage in some sort of illegal activity, there's pitfalls with the Department of Commerce, who regulates the licensee under Chapter 82, the licensing laws. There's also pitfalls under the Code of Ethics, the National Association of Realtors Code of Ethics, which all realtors are bound by. And then the third course of action is basically from a seller or a lender who we'll discuss, I'm sure, in a few minutes, but a lender who were to get defrauded or have some form of misrepresentation they think is actionable, any of the parties who were wronged in the transaction could ultimately go after the listing agent because the listing agent was serving ultimately in a dual capacity. And key throughout this, and we'll probably discuss this a little further, but key throughout this will be whether the listing agent or realtor involved in the transaction was transparent, was very forthright about what their interest was, what role they were going to be serving, and in what capacity, whose interest they'd be protecting or promoting, and whether they had made it quite clear early on that they had a self-interest in the transaction.
Good. Agency is always an issue. You touched upon a few of the fiduciary duties. Is there a way for an agent or a broker to minimize their liability by acting as a facilitator in the transaction?
Anytime an agent acts in a facilitator role, which is the default under Minnesota law, they're essentially owing the client that they're, well, in the facilitator context, it's actually referred to as a customer rather than a client. Anytime they're serving as a facilitator, they owe the customer only the duty of confidentiality. They do not owe the whole host of fiduciary duties. They still have to abide by Chapter 82 though, and Chapter 82 strictly prohibits any action that could be considered fraudulent, deceptive, or dishonest. So even if they try and insulate themselves from liability by saying, we're not going to hold ourselves out in the same role of responsibility to the seller, we're going to act as a facilitator rather than as a listing agent, they still have to abide by the law and the code of ethics, so they never really circumvent those responsibilities.
Okay. That's important.